and you feel like you need a little helping hand in the authority department. And we're going to talk about the most important and influential person that you need to convince. That's going to be that. If you convince that one person, your business is going to take off. All right. And to talk about all of this, I have a very special guest in-house today who is such an authority that he literally owns a Guinness World Record. Let's get started. All right. I hope you're excited because we've been having entirely too much fun warming up for this. And I've been talking to the one and only Jess Todtfeld. I've totally screwed this up. Hello, Jess.
Great to be here. We got some good sharing.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's right. So this is Jess Todtfeld, who is our media coach with an impact with influence. And the reason we chose Jess, apart from the fact that he is obviously extremely good looking, and one of the founding producers he's been the founding producer on multiple morning shows across the US. He really knows. He's been the producer that you wanted to get on your side, who's going to put you in front of millions of people. And he's going to tell you exactly how to hack his attention and position yourself as an authority so that Jess and his producer friends will pick you. Jess is also the founder of Success in Media and the holder of the Guinness World Record for the most amount of media done in a 24-hour period, because Jess is it's just something he does. You know what I'm saying? All right. We have a question for you. And actually, Jess, this is the first question that I'm going to ask you. I'd love to get everybody who's watching, I'd love to get your answer in the comments. What does authority mean to you? So Jess, I'm going to hand it over to you. What does authority mean to you, Jess?
The first thing that comes to my mind is this great quote, which is don't take directions from somebody who hasn't gone where you're going.
Makes so much
authority
sense.
To me, yeah, it means that person's been there, done that. They really can talk from experience. And then we want to hear what they have to say.
Exactly. I noticed that my definition of authority, or the way that I've experienced the need for authority, has really evolved over the years. I think back in the day when I was younger and I was newer and I didn't actually believe deep down that I had authority, I was obsessed. I don't know, can you relate to this? I was obsessed with having all the answers. So I'd like read all the books and take all the courses and figure out answer after. I was like, I need to have all the answers, because if I have the answers, then I will be good enough and I will be the authority. Did you have that too?
Interesting thing about then I'll be good enough. And, you know, other people probably see us as an authority for some stuff we've done, but we also need to see ourselves as the authority. And of course, there's the flip side of that, which is day one of you starting to be an expert on something, or a coach, or, you know, sharing, and you haven't actually worked with clients. And you say, how can I be the person who does that? And you got to start from wherever you are and look back at what you've done to get you to that point. You've got a certain level of authority. And as time goes on, you will have more of it.
Exactly.
But you're right. That's an excellent point, because we have to believe it as well. Probably the tougher part.
Right. And I know that, again, back in the day, I was struggling to convince people. I was so obsessed. My focus was a lot on looking like an authority because I didn't believe it. I was like, at least if I look the part, maybe other people will believe it and then I can borrow that belief, right? Now it's very much more, I'm much more interested in how I feel. Do I feel solid about something? Am I taking my own medicine? Am I embodying this principle that I teach, or that I want to put out in the world? And then it's like when you own the work and you allow the work to own you, having compassion for yourself, being willing to share some of the messy parts of those. To me, those are the people that I'm the most drawn to as authorities, right? They're not the people who are like so perfect that I'm like, I'm exhausted and depleted, because I'm like, I'm never going to be like you. Like, I am so small and insufficient and useless at so many things and undisciplined and so on and so forth. wow, I wish I could be shiny like you. The people that I'm drawn to are the people who are like, wow, this is messy. I'm imperfect. I'm bumbling towards ecstasy. And here's what it looks like. And here's how to love yourself through the process. And I'm like, I'm yours. Take my credit card. Right?
Oh, sorry, my mic was on. Sorry, I was not muted. That was funny.
We have
That's how bad
Pat
got me.
behind the scenes
Let's just be
who's
honest.
enjoying it
Yeah,
extra.
I'm
I
sorry.
totally agree, Geeta, that we want to see something real. And people don't have to be 100% perfect. In fact, it makes us feel better about ourselves when we see somebody else who seems to have one part together, the part that we're interested in, and some of the other parts of their life are not perfect. There may be like, I don't, I can say all this stuff and advise you today, and I don't realize to unmute myself. Oops. I guess, it took the last 2 years and still I haven't learned that lesson.
Yeah.
Great. That person
Right.
is real.
And you might have
yeah.
some things together, and then instead of six-pack abs, you have more of a keg.
You have more, and you want to know what? The audience doesn't care about that either. Nobody cares what your abs look like. Maybe if you're looking for a partner, which is beyond the scope of today's
Correct.
webinar. But nobody's really that concerned with that at all. They really care about what you're giving them. And everyone
Yeah.
tuning in today who's saying, I want to be the authority. And by the way, those words have changed over the years. It was thought leader only a couple of years ago, then influencer. It's all basically the same thing. I'm an influencer. Where? It could be on Instagram or Facebook, and it could just be around the 30 people that you support who pay you $10,000 a year. That's $300,000. Is that fine that you're an influencer to 30 people? That sounds pretty darn good to a lot of people tuning in. They could live with that. Oh, but what
Right.
about all those other hundreds? But well, you'll make some other content, and they'll learn about some of your brilliance. But it is an interesting point you said. And I just want to add this too. It's kind of like the Maya Angelou quote. She says people may forget what you say and what you did, but they won't forget how you made them feel.
Yes.
And we have to really realize that. And sometimes it's asking the audience. I mean, we're doing this today off of what we know the people we talk to want to hear about, which is, how do I become the authority? But what about when I'm first starting out and I know I'm not? Am I a big fraud?
We're gonna discuss that in detail because it's a great question. I love if those of you who are watching live, give me a hashtag live. I see some of you are joining it. Yay! Someone said knowledge. What's your definition of authority? It's knowledge, experience plus platform. So everybody has their own definition. It's something that's worth sitting with because I think that my definition of authority, just like my definition of beauty, again, has morphed over the years. Where I used to think about like beauty is like, wow, when you see somebody, you're like, beauty is how you feel. And now I've realized that beauty, my definition of beauty and my definition of authority is kind of similarly morphed, which is beauty is not about how I look. Beauty is about how I make you feel about yourself. Authority is about how I make you feel about yourself rather than how you feel about me. And that has really taken a lot of the pressure off. So I just want to say, like, it's not like I've suddenly like evolved and arrived and now I'm the Dalai Lama. It's less about that and more about, man, it creates so much more spaciousness to do the work when you realize that the pressure is not all on you and it's not just all about you.
I like the analogy with beauty, and authority can also be in the eye of the beholder.
Yes.
And the more we reveal our true selves, we can align ourselves with people who say, that's my person.
Yes.
I love what they're saying. In fact, I'd rather have people divide up and say, I love that person, or they're not for me, instead of the big wishy-washy middle of that you're kind of just like any old person.
Cool. Yeah, they're cool.
We don't really know
right?
what you stand for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get you. So I wanted to actually break it down and make it a little bit more granular, and then we'll move on to our next point. So Jess, the person you said, don't take directions from someone who hasn't been where you want to go. Jess, the producer, like if you were to book somebody for an interview on a morning show, if you, and obviously neither of us works in the media anymore, but we both come from that background. what were some of the authority markers that you'd be looking for where you're like, okay, does somebody have to have a book? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I was a producer for about 15 years, a TV producer on the national level, ABC, NBC, Fox. And here's what we were looking for. We wanted to be able to say underneath their name, author of blank or professor of blank, something, give them something, creator of the course teaching blank. Oh, what kind of course is it? It's an online course that's 60 minutes that you recorded on your iPhone. Nobody cares that much. There's so many ways you can get there, because I know some people are saying, but I don't have the book yet. Oh, but I don't have the degree yet. I'm going to get 19 degrees and then maybe I'll believe it. I think
Right.
that if you think, so it's great that you bring that up. That's what a producer or TV, print, radio, journalist type person is looking for. How can I say that you are qualified? Maybe to say you've been a construction worker for 30 years or 15 years that you were, or just that you work for such and such municipality and can speak about this thing. Okay, that's authority.
Right. So you have some kind of lived experience in that sphere. You have maybe some kind of title or credential in that sphere. And remember, I'm saying or, it doesn't have to be and. It's not all of these things. These are not all prerequisites. I remember, it's so funny, Jess. We were talking about this when we were preparing for this. I remember I worked in the media. I've been a journalist since I was 12. I've worked in television for then another 8-10 years. When I first launched this business, and I was on the other side of the couch, right? I was not hosting, I was not interviewing, I was the interviewee. And I had pitched as a business owner, and I'd gotten booked on a show. And it was funny because I was being interviewed by a former colleague, like somebody who I knew, somebody I'd hung out with. And I was like, my deodorant was breaking down. I was like sweating bullets, man. It was so nerve-wracking. It was so interesting to be on the other side. And when I remember Joanne, the woman who was interviewing me, who was a colleague of mine, she was like, dude, what's wrong with you, man? Like, why are you acting so weird? Like, you've done live television for 10 years. What is wrong with you? And it was different because I was putting myself out in this way that I was like, this is the thing that is my purpose. And I'm putting this out in front of the world. And what if the world says I'm too stupid or too fill in the blank to fulfill this mission, right? There's that ego that's going on. And I want to say that after I did that interview, I felt like the business, this was like way back in the day. I hadn't sold a single thing yet. I had originally thought I'm going to become an author. I'm going to write a book. And then Pat very wisely pointed out, he was like, hey, genius, who's going to pay all the bills while this book is being written for how many ever months that takes? And who's going to publish this book exactly? And like, how are we going to live off the proceeds of like, what's the promotional plan? And I was like, oh shit, that's a very long trajectory. I was like, this may not be a good plan. So I was like, screw it. I'm going to get the media first. I'm going to build a program first, and then I'll write the book eventually. But how I got booked was a hack that we were talking about earlier. Is I said, author of the upcoming book. That book never got written. It never got written.
I did the exact same thing. Author of the upcoming book. And people would say, okay. And same thing, got interviewed. And actually I had the exact same situation of being on the other side, meaning I was behind the camera originally. And then all of a sudden I was in front of the camera. And I think for people who are listening, it's, when you're out in front of whoever you're trying to help, all of a sudden you may have what is known as a stress response, meaning you're a human being and your brain is saying like, this is a little bit different than what we do all the time.
Can we name a few events where the stress response happened to you guys? That would be interesting.
Oh my God.
Well, you just did,
wow.
Guy. Maybe we should ask Jess.
Sure.
When I first went on TV, I've had it even after years of being on stage. All of a sudden, if something's just a little bit different, or there are way more people in the room, or there's people that I'm allowing it to kind of get in my head, I kind of have that feeling, and I'll say to myself, oh, that's my body's stress response. It
doesn't mean anything. Yeah.
I'm going to just focus all my energies on helping them. That's what someone who's an authority does. Yes. We just focus, how can I help them? And the more you do that, the pressure comes off you, and things get better. But I want to bring up a piece, because you brought up fake it till you make it, which is what some people say. You didn't say it. You quoted that it's out there. And when we were sitting in that moment, I realized fake it till you make it doesn't work for me, because nobody wants to feel like a fake. Nobody. Anyone tuning in right now does not want to feel like a fake, and that doesn't help. So here's the Jess phrase, which is, instead of that, act it and become it. If you act the part and you say, well, I'm the expert, I know I did these things, so at least I can act like an expert today, I'll act like it. You know what happens? Next thing you know, people are saying, this was so great. I'm so thankful that you were here. If it was at a conference, people have said, and I'm sure they will to people who are listening, this was the session I needed to be at. And, sometimes it takes a little bit of practice, but we just have to act it. And then we'll come in and think of people who become, president or prime minister or whatever you call it, who's the head of a country. You think on day one, when this person sits down and looks at the desk, they're like, yep, that's me. I have a lot of power in my head. You know that they must be thinking,
don't press the red button.
real.
Don't press the red button. Yeah, that's right.
This is real. I have to, people are asking me questions that you think they know the answer of every question? Sure, they have people to turn to, just like you. You'll have to turn to somebody. You may not have the answer. And I'm going to end my response with this. When we were talking about authority, you know who had authority when we were growing up? Our parents. They were the authority in our lives. Did they know anything? I mean, they know some things, but I mean, do they know everything?
You only say that because we're parents now, and we're like, wow, we are totally making this shit up.
Yeah, you can both still be the authority and not have the pressure of having to know everything ever. I've had it where people ask me a question in a media training or on a stage or somewhere, and I'll say, I have some thoughts on that, but I'm going to be answering this thinking it through out loud. Which is, here's one side, here's another side, here's what this makes me think, and I may return to it later and reserve the right to change my mind.
I love that. And so let's just move into, how do I start if I'm brand new? Because I know that how many of you here are thinking, yeah, but that's great, Jess. You have a Guinness World Record. How fancy and schmancy is that? And I'm just me. What am I going to do? I love that. You can both still be the authority and not have all the answers. Because the fact of the matter is, the best authorities in the world, I look at the people that I respect, that I deeply respect, that I would follow to the ends of the earth. They're not the ones who are always telling me what to do. They help me think about my problem differently. They help me tap into my wisdom instead of kind of waving the flag of their wisdom. And so
they likely have way better questions, and they don't have to have all the answers.
Always. So how do you start if you're brand new? I mean, first things first, learn to ask better questions. I have an entire training on how to ask better questions, by the way. It's called How to Ask Life-Changing Questions. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's on my YouTube channel. If you're watching this in the Messaging That Makes Money Facebook group, look in the media section and you will be able to find it. Or put a comment and be like, hey, tag me on the training, and somebody on our team will tag you. So that's that. Let's talk about imposter syndrome, Jess, because we were talking about how it often affects everybody, to be fair. Everybody deals with it. Like you said, the president on day one, no matter how qualified he is for the job, like, holy crap, this is a big desk and a big red button. I better not push it. Yeah.
And we talk about getting started on whatever it is, writing that book, becoming a coach, getting up on a stage, you name it, wherever you're going to challenge yourself. There is that little voice that says, who
are you
to think off?
Yeah.
How are you the person who should be talking about this when there's already experts who are way ahead of you? And that you just said the phrase, which is imposter syndrome. And the only people who don't worry about imposter syndrome, the imposters. Those are the only ones where it doesn't creep in their head. And they're like, I'm great at all of this, and I'm going to tell you how I'm investing your money, and they're possibly running a Ponzi scheme, that they never worried about it. the rest of us are, oh, am I ready? You're never ready. You have to have a day one that you're starting. I told you this story recently where I was training somebody to be another media trainer and presentation trainer. And he had enough in his background that I said, it's good enough for now. And when you're working with these people, you need to tell stories and give examples of other people you've helped with similar problems. And he had only done one other training with another set of clients. So I said, well, when you work with these clients today, refer back and say, one time I helped these clients and this thing happened. And then, this was the outcome. Don't say that it was last week, but say one time when I worked with these clients. And then after today, you'll have a whole bunch of new stories.
We're on. We're on. Can you hear me, guys? Tell me in the comments. We're sorry. See, this is what happens in the best case scenario with all the broadband.
And you want to know what? And you know what? This doesn't bother me one bit at all. And I'll tell you why. Because this is what everybody deals with. It's almost like when a call gets dropped and you're talking to a friend or a family member, and then oh, sorry, something happened. You continue where you were. That's technology for you. And we jump back in.
I love it. Right. And I think what I love about, so when I look at the people that I have paid big money to, that I follow, that I learn from, that I respect, and I'm going to let them make me very uncomfortable and push me out of my comfort zone because I respect them so much and I believe that they're qualified to take me where I want to go, because that's kind of another element of my definition of authority. These are the people who I realize one of the reasons I respect them so much is because they have been through a lot to get what they've gotten. Like, nobody wants to learn how to get rich from the trust fund baby, right? I remember a storytelling expert that I once trained with, and he had the craziest stories of all the mad, unforeseen things that had happened to him while he was doing his speaking engagements, right? I mean, from like literally, he had a shooter run into he was on stage doing a presentation, he was doing a workshop, and a freaking armed guy came in and like threatened to shoot everybody. Like, this happened to him. He had so many stories like this, and I was like, see, you didn't. So what I loved about him, and the reason that I respected him so much, was he found the courage. This is not an inherent trait. This is a choice that he made. And I realized this is very much an active decision, not an inherent talent or trait. He found the courage to keep going after really crazy, uncomfortable experiences like that. He didn't just throw up his hands and say, oh, this is not the career for me. This is not going to work for me. Or I bombed. He told me stories about how he bombed. He told me stories about how people booed him. He told me stories about like the most cringeworthy things that you could possibly, like things that I had not even thought to imagine. I was like, oh, wow, I never even thought that that could happen. Whole new level of anxiety, right? And he was just like, yeah, and then here's what happened next, and nobody remembers that anymore. And everybody, and did you just pay me a bunch of money to learn from me? Yes. Okay, great. I was like, true, that happened to you, and you didn't die, and here you are, and I really respect you. Maybe there's hope for me. So a huge part of this, when we talked about who's the one most important influential person that you need to convince of your authority, I think, Jess, you've already said it.
Ourselves.
Always.
We have to convince ourselves. That's the toughest barrier to getting started, right? And
always.
That, not to turn this into a therapy session, but yeah, a lot of times
what,
when we
and
get
break
in our
tradition?
own way, right? Why not? When we get in our own way, it's probably something left over from something someone said to us as a child. There are a lot of people, in Australia, they call it tall poppy syndrome. Where do you
Mm-hmm.
get off, and why do you think you're so great, and this, that. So people are pushing themselves down and dimming their own lights. And we shouldn't do that to ourselves. So we have to build a muscle that does the opposite, that says, people need to hear this. I am going out and I'm helping people, and I can enjoy myself in the process along the way. And the process is not going to be without bumps, because that's just anything in life, anything. And pick something that you think that you can enjoy doing, or helping people in some way.
Yes, yes. So there are some real truth bombs that you've already dropped that I want to pick up. So one thing is figure out what is a process that you love. Like, so when it comes to take your own medicine, right? How do you build authority? So yes, you feel like a fraud, or yes, you don't feel good enough. Well, then what do you do to get over that? Well, this is what we're talking about now. Step one, take your own medicine. If you're preaching something, do it. And then don't panic when you do it and it doesn't work, because that's part of the process. That is going to happen. What you have to figure out is, okay, I did it the way I thought to do it. It didn't work. Now, does this mean that this process is useless? Does it mean that this process doesn't work in this context? Does it mean that this process needs a little bit of tweaking to make it more available to different contexts? Those are the questions that you get to ask yourself. And now you're going to be one of those authorities that has lived experience, because your process broke down, you rebuilt it, you understand the emotional journey of it, you sat with all of the angst that it created, but you found and you decided to find the courage to continue. And that, I think, is really, and I mean, Jess, I like one of my favorite experts and authorities of all time is Brene Brown. And the reason that I love her, I mean, she is wicked smart. And yes, she is brilliant with her research. And she has a lot of, and she does research. And she even talks about how she uses the research sometimes as a shield to kind of hide behind. And she's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but the research says blah, blah, blah. So it's not me. Like, don't shoot the messenger. It's the research. And she talks about that. But there are a lot of really, really brilliant people out there that have higher IQs than Brene Brown, that have better hair, that have bigger audiences or whatever. But the reason that she has my heart is because she's so transparent about the struggle that she has with the work. She talks about how the work kicks her ass. She talks about what it feels like to have a vulnerability hangover. She talks about all of those messy, oogie pieces. And I'm just like, oh, Brene, you make me feel like you're human and you made it. That means there's hope for me. Do you have someone
And,
that you follow that makes you feel that way, Jess?
that their transparency.
Yeah.
I mean, the first person that comes to mind is somebody like Oprah. When you think about
Yeah.
weight loss, she went through this whole journey like everybody who was tuning in. And it's funny, because I once had a client who was a weight loss author, this guy, and he said to me, this is for media training and some consulting, and he said, do you think it's a problem that I'm heavy and I'm going to tell people how to lose weight? So I thought about it for a second. I said, I don't think it helps. I'm like thinking through it here. Like, he was working with me to figure out, how do we make this come together? So I thought about it for a second, and I did think of Oprah, and I said, well, how do we turn what is your biggest negative into your biggest positive? So instead of being like, oh, this is the problem that everybody's thinking, how do we make it that it's your superpower? That's what separates you from everybody else. There's a million muscle bound guys with, hard rock abs that are out giving fitness advice. But for this guy to explain and to talk about his own journey would be better. So we really experimented with that. And then, he went off into the world. And we like hearing from Oprah. Maybe she says, this is what all the research says, and this is what the best people are doing, and this is where I struggle in these ways. I can do this, but I want to have that cake. So as long as somebody does it authentically, we're okay with taking advice from them.
Yeah. I think it's when you own it, right? I think that if you have an insecurity and you're hiding it, if you have an insecurity and you're denying it, if you have an insecurity and you're just like, I hope nobody sees that, I'm going to push it off screen. People sense it. They may not see it, but they can sense it. and you sense it, and therefore you project it. But if you're like, okay, I'm really uncomfortable with this thing. So when you're uncomfortable with it, someone asked in the comments, how transparent is too transparent? Well, the way I like to look at it is, if you're if you feel resolved about something, if you're in the messy middle of something, like you just had a giant fight or you're having a total panic attack about something, that may not be, and obviously if it's really, now there's a few nuances here. If you're having a big panic attack about something, but it's not related to your topic of authority, like let's say you're a business builder, but then you're having a panic attack about some emotional, or like you had some loss with your family or something, and that's what's kind of giving you the anxiety, by all means, you can share it while it's in the messy middle. No big deal, because it doesn't relate to your topic. It doesn't relate to what people are coming to you for advice. It just shows that you're human, and that despite all your success over here, you're still struggling with some very basic human stuff. That's fine. If, on the other hand, you're an emotional resilience coach, then sharing that in the middle of your struggle is not necessarily going to build your authority, unless right in that, unless it's like reality TV where by the end of the episode you have resolution. Then, oh hell yes. But if it's like a multi-part series and people don't get to the end, then then people are going to be like, well, why would I learn from you? You have it either just as bad as me or worse than me. So the magic kind of idea of like, how transparent is too transparent? I think you should go transparent. Just go transparent about the things that you've figured out, or at least partially figured out, so that you have something to contribute. It's not because you want to hide something. It's more that, do you have anything to contribute about this, or are you just dumping your feelings on other people? That's the filter that I would use.
Absolutely. And to build on what you just said about, how much is too far, leadership author Sylvia Lafair, who is also a friend of mine, likes to say, opening your heart is not spilling your guts.
I
So you
love
can
that.
open your heart and you can share certain things. You got to figure out which part, like, where's the line of spilling your guts? It's one thing if I came on here and said, oh, I don't feel so well. And it's another thing if I describe exactly everything going on in my body. It's like, enough. I didn't know. Okay, it was enough. You told us the first part.
Unless it's in context and it's somehow contributing and helping somebody, then yes. Like if you're a health coach and you're just like, here's all the crap that nobody ever talks about, and this is what I went through, thumbs up. Get as graphic as you like, no problemo. People will love you for being graphic. But at the same time, if people are coming to you for media advice and you're talking about all your graphic physical stuff, is that really contributing to the conversation? Maybe not.
We have to decide where it's relevant. And here's a thought for people who say, but I'm not all the way there yet. Well, let's say you were the health coach. What if you did something where you said, I'm going through the journey with you. This is what the science says. This is what all these doctors say you should do. I'm going to guide you because I'm standing next to you going through, instead of with the bullhorn yelling at you, 10 more push-ups. I'm going to go through it with you. That there are many ways to figure out where you fit in at the moment you are in your life.
Exactly. And obviously, if you want to charge a premium, to be able to charge a premium, you have to have certain things figured out. I cannot sugarcoat this. This is just the nature of the beast. If you're really early on or you're still figuring things out, you're not ready to charge a premium, because like, just run it through the yourself test, right? Would you pay a premium to somebody? Would you pay somebody thousands of dollars to work with them if they are walking next to you on the journey? Maybe
and
not.
The flip side, is that at some point you're going to be able to give yourself a raise, and probably more than you think.
Yes. And you're more likely to be able to give yourself the raise if you give yourself permission to start where you are, versus trying to pretend you're a lot further along than you are. Start where you are, accept the wisdom that you already have, and start building upon it. Break the system, rebuild it. Like I said, beta test it in real life, see where it breaks down, see where it doesn't hold anymore. Then when you're able to bring it, and Andre is, I saw Andre here, authority, he says, authority is somebody who has lived experience, struggled, learned things about themselves, overcome the struggles, and continues to struggle. See, that's sexy, because you've overcome some struggles. Doesn't mean that you have arrived, or that you're cured or that you're whatever, like perfect or shiny forever. It's not like that, but you've definitely overcome some stuff, and the piece that you've overcome is the piece that plagues a lot of your population. In that situation, yes, you can absolutely charge a premium. But if you're more like I talk about the continuum, right? If you're further back on the continuum and you're still figuring these things out, then the best thing to do in that situation is to get help in figuring it out faster so that you can give yourself that raise. That is still an investment in yourself, because not only are you going to get yourself through the problems, but in figuring it out through this way, you're going to be able to then build authority for yourself and feel confident in your ability to pass that on and pay it forward. So yeah, that's kind of our thoughts there.
Gita, I'd like to start a section of our chat called Bad Advice. And this is where I say, if you have a dream and you wanted to do something, whether it's writing a book or helping people, push it way down and die with the gifts inside of you. Bad advice.
Bad advice.
Bad advice.
Bad advice.
No,
I have other bad advice. Bad advice is also let people in your friends and family circle who have never done what you're attempting to do and have no idea really what the hell you're even talking about, take their advice on what you shouldn't do. That's always a good
bad advice. Bad advice. Yeah. And so the opposite of that, for people who are listening, who are saying, oh, I've kind of always wanted to do this, is to do the opposite of that and try it. We're only on this planet for so long. Try it. What if it's not perfect? Okay, well, you tried something. Maybe you decided, maybe you had a little bit more stamina and you decided to figure out, how do I make it better? Because it's not going to be perfect when you start. It may be good enough to start and then you make it better.
And what I like to say is, yeah, and Greer is saying in the chat, in the comments, she said, I gave myself permission to be a few steps ahead of my clients. So I love this, Greer. I love that you brought this up. Thank you so much for that. What I love about Greer, and Greer is one of our clients, she worked with us on Grow. She was able, and she got premium sales. That's what she was saying. And what was awesome about that is that she was able to give herself permission to be right where she was. She owned her authority on what she had actually figured out, instead of trying to project herself into the future where she was a lot more perfect than she actually felt. Because that's what makes you feel like an imposter, is saying, well, if I'm not good enough the way I'm at right now, I need to pretend I'm all the way over there. That's the problem. Whereas Greer was like, here's where I'm at. I have figured some stuff out. This is what I'm going to teach about. And there she owned her authority. That confidence shines through. That's where the premium clients come from. So I just want to be clear about that. I think
she figured it out.
Yeah.
She figured it out in the gap. And the gap is where you are and where you want to be. And I know, you do these epiphany calls where you help people figure out what's in that gap and what they should do next. And, sometimes we just need help. We're too close to ourselves, Gita.
It's so
We're too close to our own thing. And we need somebody else to be like, but aren't you the person who did this? Couldn't you just ask X, Y, and Z people? And you're like, oh, yeah. We're just too close. It's like right here. It's like when you're in the store. You're like, I can't find the towels anymore anywhere. And they're like, it's right. Oh, okay. Whatever it is.
Exactly. That's
I didn't say it was right in front of my face.
Totally. And I think what we do at Impact with Influence, I think that makes this process extra powerful is we don't go directly to that step of saying, no, but I had a conversation recently with somebody I love, a close friend, who was bemoaning the fact that she didn't feel good enough. She didn't feel like she was ever going to find her purpose. She didn't feel like she was going to, she was like, everybody else seems to know what they're doing, and I'm just the only person who doesn't, and so on and so forth. And what a really good coach will do in that situation is not do what a friend would likely do. A friend will say, but like, look, you figured out this and you're great at that and you're doing this. Like, what are you talking about? Because what that does is it makes the person feel even more alone with their guilt and their shame and their fear and they're like, oh God, everybody else is like fucking trying to convince me of this stuff that just does not resonate with me. Instead, what a great coach will do is sit with you in that yuckiness of shame and of despair and say, that must really hurt. What's the story underneath that? Why does this hurt so bad? And go there. Like, it's super counterintuitive. Like, you want to go there and feel it and fall apart and allow it to come through you. And then what we do in our program is when you have that meltdown, because our mindset coach will do that with you. When you have that meltdown, you're going to brain dump it in a Google Doc, bring it over to the copy team. And then that deepest, rawest part, like that deepest, rawest story of like what is happening and what it feels like and what the stories are that are coming up around it. Once we've resolved it, so again, this goes back to the transparency piece, right? You're not spilling your guts. You're not just being like, this is what's going on with me on social media. That's not the appropriate place for it. You're going to do this supported where you're safe. You're going to have it out. You're going to heal. You're going to now have a different perspective. We're going to lance the boil, and then you're going to have healing that goes, now your skin is whole again. Now you're like, I get it now. I understand why that paralyzed me so much. Now the copy team will take all of that brain dump that you put in a Google Doc and help you turn it into messaging. And that's when your people are going to be like, God damn it, you are literally narrating my inner journey. How the hell do you know me so well? How are you able to articulate what's going on inside me before I've even figured it out? It's like handing you the towel before you knew to ask for it. Like, you come out dripping wet from the bath and somebody hands you a towel. That's the effective messaging at this level. And that's what you want. That's what's going to help you stand out from the noise. That's what's going to help you communicate the authority that you now own. So, Jess, I think we're pretty much out of time. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I would love to hear everybody's biggest ahas from this session, because I feel like I learned a lot. I would love to hear what landed for you. Just how do people reach you? I think a good thing for us to talk about is, when is the right time to work with Jess? Well, you can work with Jess through our program anyways, because Jess is our media coach. So we have our media training that Jess and I co-teach in our program, and he will give you very detailed feedback on your pitches before they go out to the press, and we give you a media list of contacts and everything. We have all of that covered. However, it's when you're ready for the really big time, or where you're like, okay, I have enough cash flow now where I want to hand this off to somebody who's going to do it for me. That's when Jess comes in. So Jess, tell us a little bit about how you do that.
Yes, if people are thinking about getting some media attention, meaning TV, print, radio, and want to have some help either getting the attention or turning it into business, reach out. Of course, there's that media cheat sheet that's free. You can just download it. Media Ambassadors is our big done for you program, and you can go to mediaambassadors.com, check it out. There's usually a link somewhere to email me. So yeah, check those out. And I would say, kind of wrapping up today, just decide, what do you want in general? What do you want? What is the gap, and who can get you through the gap?
And if you want to know how to want what you want, and you're not familiar with this practice, buy my book, How to Live Your Vision, because I have there's a whole want practice in there, and that is what has absolutely helped to change my life. Andre was asking, what's number 4? Because there's 4 simple ways to own your authority. I'm going to walk you through them real quick. Number 1, define what the hell authority means to you. That way you're aimed at the right thing, and you're not building some like shelf, looks cute on the outside version. You're really an authority the way that you believe it. Number 2, how do you start if you're brand new? You start by overcoming your imposter syndrome, by fully embodying your work. And further to that, number 3 is take your own medicine. So when you're brand new and you're like, I may not have all the credentials I wish I had. I don't have the book. I don't have this. I don't have that. The way that you're going to go through this is you're going to take your own medicine. You're going to break down your systems. You're going to rebuild them. You're going to move forward and move through them. And number 4 is approach with curiosity. And this is what Jess was talking about, where he's just like, if somebody asks me a question and I don't know the answer, or I'm not like, I don't have all the answers right there, I'm going to slow my thought process down. I'm going to ask thoughtful questions, both to myself and to the other person. And that's going to create the spaciousness with which now the audience and you, or even the person who's interviewing you, you're co-creating. You're not here being like, hey, look at me, I'm so smart, I'm an authority. You're saying, hey, you're so smart. You've already figured this out. And here's a different way. Here's another layer to add to it. Here's something that you already know that I'm going to help you we're going to tweak it just a little bit. And that's going to help you own it more deeply. And now it's like, you don't have to learn this whole new thing. It's like, oh, I can make this work with what I already have with just this minimal tweak. Oh my God, what a weight off your shoulders, right? How do you feel about that? I get really excited about that. Does that make sense? So you've got your 4 ways to really build authority. And of course, the last piece is the bonus point is now you know what to share, right? So if you've kind of put all the pieces together with what we've talked about, you now know how to share out there. And if you want help in having a real clear framework for how to organize the information that you want to share, well, then explore the link on your screen. Reach out to my team. We'll have a conversation with you and see if we're in a position to help. If you're far enough along on the continuum where we believe that what our tools and our methods and our support is going to help catapult you to the next level. Thank you so, so much for being with us today. Thank you, Jess, for being here. You're always so much fun to hang out with.
A pleasure. It was great. And that bonus extra point, maybe number 5, is take action.
Yes.
Think about what you want and take even a small little action. Take action.
Exactly.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. And thank you guys for watching. Please share your biggest ahas in the comments and I will come back and answer any questions that you have. See you next Thursday. Bye. Often we manifest drama and struggle to keep us honest. We don't trust expansion with ease because deep down, we distrust our own motives. Much of this conflict occurs deep within us. It's pernicious, feeding a pattern of self-sabotage that we aren't always aware is there. This disbelief in our own success is hidden. So we have to shine awareness on it and peel back the layers to address it head on. We have to develop discernment without judgment to make our unseen doubts visible and begin addressing them without shame. Only by understanding and developing true desire and discernment can we fully live our vision.